Hey, welcome back to Open Door Conversations. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 2 titled It Ain't You Sis, or Is It? This episode, we're going to be talking about intimate relationships or actually relationships of any kind where um, you're in relationship with people and seemingly may have a negative impact on relationship dynamics. And so we're looking at handling the idea of what more can you do in relationship before realizing it ain't me, it's just not me, or is it actually your own stuff that's getting in the way of healthy relationships? Not all things that you experience are because of you or something that you've done, but there are times when we just have to accept the fact that some of the stuff that's going on may actually be our part or our responsibility. So thank you again for joining us. I'm your host, Renata, and this is my co host,
Fatima. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, Nada.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited about this topic. Um, we won't go into how we came up with the topic. That's going to always be an inside one. Every time we say it ain't you, sis, or is it? Because,
Are
but
you sure? Are you sure? Because that meme was hilarious. Okay.
it was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Oh,
But for anonymity, we won't go into it right just yet.
that's good. You know what? That's Listen. You haven't steered me wrong yet. So
But one time you had said that titles are important. And so
mhm.
that's why I really like the title of this one because it
Yeah.
is important and it goes along with everything that you said about it. Like sometimes it ain't you, sis, or is it? Because then
Mhm.
when we're so quick to, just as the perpetrator is quick to always blame everything on you, we're so quick to say it ain't me without even trying to take a pause to look in the mirror, and we've spoken about this before. I'm grateful and blessed for our relationship
Mhm.
to be able to have that look in the mirror person, like, you know what,
Right.
Nada, this, and this. And I don't think it was me, and then, but I will say to you, tell me what you think. Is it
Mhm.
me? So it took, this didn't just happen, 48 years here I am to be able to say, what do you think? Because I recognize that. It ain't always me. 8 out
Right.
of 10 times it's not. you know. But those 2 times it's like it is you, sis. But in relationships, um, I think that's where we have the biggest issue with that, especially intimate relationships. And when we're dealing with a narcissist, when
Oh.
we're dealing with someone that is a pro at gaslighting,
Oh.
um, that knows how to avoid accountability.
Yeah.
That's where those things come in to make you think that it is you all the time. It could be something as little as you didn't cook the right kind of rice. So now it's you don't ever do anything right. You don't know how to cook. This is why this is like this is why that is like that. And especially as women, because we are
Mhm.
nurturers of, not just our kids, but relations in general. We
Right.
want to make sure that everything is good. Everything is right. Everything is perfect because that's what's shown on TV and that's what we're taught, that we're supposed to make sure that everything is good. So when we get into that, oh well, you didn't cook this right or you don't know how to do this right, we begin to internalize that and really believe that. But
Right.
how do you take that step back to look at it like, is it me? Especially if it's something you've dealt with, not just in adulthood, but say maybe childhood too, because some of that acceptance of that behavior comes from childhood as well.
Ooh, that's a good question. And you know what? I'm gonna lead off, I think, with the last word you said, or one of the last words you said, which was acceptance. And I think that the thing that we have to really do, and there needs to be, they got a buzzword for everything.
Everything,
right?
child.
Yeah. And so, what I think the buzzword has to be in this phase of life, or this, we'll say this generation, is self awareness.
Mm,
How about we have a buzzword called self awareness, and
mhm.
we got to operate in that, because I don't think that just as easy, I think nature kind of lends itself to us looking and faulting other people. Let's just be honest. It's easier to do that,
Yeah,
right?
because then that's the lack of accountability.
Lack of accountability. But thank you, Michael Jackson. God rest your soul. But singing that song called Man in the Mirror. You know, I
Come on
have a
now.
song, thing, right? And you have to really be self aware. You have to desire to be self aware, because here's the thing, it's it's healthier for us to grow past the things that we used to do, right? I remember one of my dearest friends, rest his soul, his name was Verdell Holloway. And Verdell used to say, you know, that if you are in relationship with most like people over the course of your life, he's like, and you, stuff keep ending. He like, at some point you got to stop and ask yourself, wait a minute. Like, I'm the one who keeps showing up in these relationships, and the same outcome is happening. Like, I need to sit down, have some seats, and really look at myself and see, is it me? Is there anything about that could be me? And so, while it is easier, I think, for us to look at, other people and blame sometimes, or place blame, we equally, if we're concerned about growth, if we don't
Mm.
want to stay the same, if we don't want to, continue down the same path and have the same kind of relationships, if we want to break cycles, you got to become self aware. You got to really look at your own stuff.
So there's so much in that. So when you begin to look at your own stuff, if you don't have a sounding board,
Oh,
because
yeah.
all of that is new. So if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have a sounding board, to be able to listen and to be able to tell you, no, this time it's not you. It was such and such, or it was them. But nah, this time this has you all over it.
Mm.
To do as just as Verdell said and Mr. Jackson said, to look at that man or woman in the mirror and be honest with it. We always say, look in the mirror and tell yourself how beautiful you are, how amazing you are. But what about no, you messed that one up. No, you could have done that differently.
Right.
So how do you, if you don't have that sounding board? Because again, let's be honest, everything is so fake these days that you don't know what's real.
That's true. So it is a lot of that. It's a lot of that.
So how do you get to that point of self-reflection, self-awareness, accountability, accepting accountability?
Mm-hmm.
Does does any of that matter? Does your partner or your friendships or your siblings, or does is there any other component of that to help you to get to that?
Oh, yes, for sure. I think you answered that question already, which is really where my mind was going, which is, who you have around you is so important. You hear many different phrases, I think, of, you show me who your friends are and I'll tell you where you end up, or,
Mm,
you are in life where you are based on the people you associate with, right? So I would have to agree. I think that our friendships, our relationships, those people that we have around us are either feeding us to and toward growth, or they're either, taken away, right? So I think that it is important we talk about, is it you, or is it not? You know what I mean? It ain't you, sis, or is it? If it is you, how do you? Here's one. I think one of the best exercises that I have with people who have what we call like a arrested development, right? There's some things that they didn't learn. Let's be real. They didn't learn.
mm,
I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, If you come into therapy, therapy is the schoolhouse. And come to therapy, learn you some relational skills because we didn't probably learn those, a lot of us. You can either go to school and get the price tag yourself, or you can go see a therapist who already got a price tag, right? But go get you some relational skills so that you start to really learn, like, hey, um, what's healthy relationship? How do I
Mhm.
identify? Here, I think it answers the question for the whole title, which is it them, somebody else? It ain't me, or is it? Because when you start to really understand what healthy relationship is, like what it encompasses, things like trust and honesty and autonomy and all of those different things are facets of what can make up healthy relationships. The ability for me to move and be myself and that person be themselves and us to be emotionally regulated. I'm just throwing out characteristics of healthy
Right, right.
relationship. And so if you have healthy relationship, that can be a marker to help you determine, is it somebody else, right? That is, you are experiencing things like you said in the beginning, gaslighting, manipulation, twisting of things, right? Just unhealthy dialogue, unhealthy cycle. Because if you getting gaslit or
Hmm.
it ain't you, sis. You need to realize that's an unhealthy, toxic relationship. And you ain't married. I ain't saying you gotta stay if you married either, but you really need to bounce. Maybe, possibly, strongly.
Strongly,
You ain't
we strongly suggest, when you're
you're not anchored.
in
Yeah,
meetings and you're doing foot stomping, because that's what the important part. So we foot
right.
stomp that part. Like, if you ain't married and this is a continual thing,
Strongly
I'm
consider.
gonna need you to exit stage left quickly, sis
Listen,
and bro,
sis and
like, because
bro,
it goes
they
both
go
ways.
both. You right. And that same question about is it me can be answered too, because I can look at that marker of healthy characteristic of a relationship and realize, yeah, I'm not measuring up either. If I'm honest, if I want to grow.
If that's the, and see that the key word there is if.
Mhm.
That's that if, because once again, in order to want to grow, first we got to lay it all out on the line. We
That's
got to
true.
put it all
Yeah,
out there on paper. We got to face the ugly of the ugly of the ugly. It's just
that's
like when I say, when you ask, like, Lord, show me myself.
oh.
No, don't show me the way you see me. You see it all. So be careful what it is that you ask for. So in that growth, in that healing, um, in that realization comes
Mhm.
so many different layers. And when we
That's
peel back those layers, that's when, especially in therapy, is when you realize there's a whole new me.
mhm,
So I think that that's the key word, like you said, is if we're
mhm,
willing to do all those things,
mhm.
because then you have to be prepared to face yourself, number
Right,
one, and
right.
then face that partner or
Mhm.
that sibling or that parent, um,
Oh.
to let them know that, you know what, not everything was me, but I will own mine.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
You
Now,
know,
here's a question I have for you. How then, let's say you have, because you gave some really good relationship dynamics, parent child, spouse, friend, boyfriend, girlfriend. So you hit on some different relationship dynamics. How do you begin to have like conversation? Because ultimately we want to grow past, well, hopefully we do. We want to grow past where we are. Once we identify, is it them or is it me, right? And let's say that the people want to be in relationship with one another and they've recognized, is it me? What do you do?
ooh, that's a good one, because we already know, especially in our community, therapy is not the first option. So
Mhm.
it it's going to take, if that's what you want to do and you want to have those conversations. Number one, the relations that you're able to just sit down and have the conversation. That I've been doing some self-reflecting lately, and I've realized that in some of the issues or discontentment that we may have had, this is where I stood. This is where I see I had an effect in it. And leave it there because it's
Mm-hmm.
about you. It's not about this is where I see I've messed up and this is where I see you could do this. No, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
This is about you. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we go into the and then you did this and then you did that, then we've defeated the whole purpose of just recognizing what it is that we've done. Because now we've turned into them and want to place the blame on them on everything else that has gone wrong. And so, one thing that we both love to journal, but one thing my husband always tells me is write them a letter. If you can't have that conversation just yet, write them a letter. So then they're still able to hear and understand your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
that you're not ready to speak yet. But then you
Yeah.
have to ask yourself too, why can't I speak it yet? Am I
Yeah.
still not ready to own it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, so that would be my suggestions.
That's a good tool too. The letter writing. I think people underestimate. And well, here's the reality. And I say this generation. I don't mean in age. I mean people who are still alive. Anybody who's still alive in this generation on the earth. Okay, so don't y'all start emailing us talking about why is she putting down generation X or Y or Z. No, I'm talking about everybody who's alive may not be familiar or comfortable or remember um, writing letters.
Mm,
Some people don't even know what that is, right? The art of that. And so that's a great tool because a lot of times people feel like we just have to talk everything out. We got to get it out. And one of the worst things I think to like, for relationship and healthy communication rather, is feeling like you got to say everything, just
mm,
get it off your chest in that moment. And I tell people the reality that is that if you angry, your logical brain, like, it's not even online
mm-mm.
in that moment.
Nope.
So you getting any ounce of reciprocation, healthy conversation, healthy dialogue, like none of that is gonna happen while while you're in your feelings.
That part, that there it is, while you're in your feelings, because number one, they're not listening, and you just word vomited everything that halfway don't even make sense to what even the issue was.
That's true. Cause you
You
so
know,
angry.
and that's like you said, I think when it comes to responding in anger, we really need to take that step back and that pause before we respond, because one thing about words is you say it and you cannot take them back. And no matter how many times people say it was said out of anger, it was still there. It was
Yeah.
still in your thought process and it was still in your heart. That's why it came out. So at some point in time, you believed those things and thought those things. That's why
Mm,
they came
mm,
out.
mm, hmm. That's why the letter is important, I think. That's why I really think that's a cool tool because it really helps you take the pause. And writing, I think some people, writing is a form of processing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a form of release. And so you
Yes.
may not send everything that you get out, but it also helps slow you down so that you can really gather your thoughts and manage your emotions and those things to kind of help you get through. What about the people who are in the toxic relationship, who are experiencing the things that you talked about before? Because we've done a lot of talking, I think, about good talking, about identifying when it's you and what are some things you can do. You can go to get you some therapy, and we'll have an episode or two maybe on how to how to benefit from therapy and really some things to consider when looking for a therapist, how and why it can be very beneficial, and some different ways that you can seek out treatment and support and that type of thing around individual, group, family, what have you, therapy.
Mhm.
But for the person who's in relationship with someone who is doing toxic things, because I want to speak to the behavior, not the people, right?
Right,
The
right.
person. What do you do as the person on the receiving end of it ain't me, sis? I recognize that some of this is not me, but maybe they just don't know how to navigate.
So I know you threw that question at me, but I'm going to have to graciously give it back to you. And here's the reason why. Here's the reason why.
Mhm.
I'm a fight or flight. I don't say much. If I feel as though I am, and we'll get into this also later, I am being attacked or that things I am being abused mentally or verbally, I will leave. Based upon my past experience, I'm not even going to deal with it. So my
Mhm.
response to what you just said would be leave. Why even try to figure anything out about it? So that's why I'm going to graciously pass that back to you so that they can get a deeper response. And that is my true, honest, I couldn't be more real. I'm out.
Now listen, I'm a recovering dipper outer.
Listen, look, so I guess y'all got y'all's answer, but Nana gonna go ahead and give
Hi, my name's Renata, and I dip out. I will cut you slam off.
it's clear. Done.
Slam off. Listen, I had to grow from that because what? Oh, and I had to really let the Lord deal with me on this topic because I struggled. I was like, what? Oh, no, I don't have time for that.
At
But here's the
all.
reason. And this may not be for everybody. We're not saying stay in toxic, abusive relationship.
Absolutely
People are
not.
hitting, beating, and financially abusing and psychologically. We're not saying that, right?
No.
There is truth in that. Remember, if you are in relationship with other people, all of us are imperfect, and
Mm,
probably all of us are coming into relationship with unhealthy. I call them knapsack, also known as baggage. But we come in with these unhealthy knapsacks and ways of doing and interacting. And remember, a lot of us don't have relational skills.
mm,
And so in that, I'm not saying you put up with a lot. I'm just saying at some point, if you want to grow, then you may have to show up different. And that's what I had to find for me. So I'm going to give you an acronym. As therapists, we are always learning something new. It's a lifelong learning profession. You will always be learning for as long as you are practicing, right? And I remember combing through this, something, and I was looking for something else, and I ran across this video. You know me again, titles that are important. So that thing caught my eye. I was like, huh. This lady, she's in Southern California, and Lord, I think her name is like Dr. Romani or something like that. But she was explaining, she does a lot with people who deal with narcissistic personality disorder
mm.
or people in relationship with people who, function, because, I don't like to label people,
Right.
but function in narcissistic personality disorder traits. Now, the acronym she gave to people was, and it's so funny that you said deeper revelation because that's the acronym deep, right? And I said, I listened to that because I was already working. I said, oh, she's giving me some new language, a easier
Mm,
way to kind of put this up. And what I realized is that you can use this for any dysfunctional behavior in relationship of any kind. It really helps you to implement boundaries, right?
okay.
So when you're in relationship with people, she said, D, don't get into the space of defending your position. And that this doesn't mean ever, right?
Right.
But it means when you're in an unhealthy dialogue, cycle, or conversation or dynamic where it's just not like, you're not going to get anything across, you're not receiving, they're not receiving, right? It ain't you, sis, in that conversation. You have been in that relationship long enough to know it ain't you, sis, in that moment.
Yes.
You
Yes.
have been in that relationship long enough to identify the cycles. You have been in that relationship long enough probably to know, to sense like, oh yeah, I can see this thing coming a mile away.
Mm.
So pay attention, right? And
I
here's
like
the way to not get yourself sucked into the tidal wave, because that's the example I gave with this, right? Don't defend. I'm in conversation and you know that your position is healthy and sound. You're not being vindictive. You're not being ruthless. You're not being mean. You're just saying, hey, you know that this is a healthy, but don't defend. Why are you defending your position on that? Especially in toxic conversation.
right.
When you see the display of narcissistic, dysfunctional, borderline, like whatever unhealthy behavior you're witnessing, don't defend in that moment. The first E was, and I'm looking at my note, was don't engage. Why are
Mm.
you engaging in back and forth conversation and back and forth? And you got to let them know, and you got to be the one, and they can't usurp you, or they can't. Why are you engaging in that? We talking about you want to be healthy, right? And you don't want it to be you, sis or brother. Don't engage. Do not get sucked in. The second E was don't explain. Why am I going to
Mm.
go explanation scavenger and trying to get you to understand my point? I got to make it come across. Why? Because they're not listening. No way.
No way.
If it's narcissism, trust me, they don't care. Your position is null and void if it's narcissistic behavior. So why even explain? And lastly, don't personalize, because you
Ooh.
see that coming a mile away, sis and bruh. It ain't you. You already know the pattern. Why are you personalizing that? If they're talking about you, if they're saying something, if they're lying, if they're doing this or that, don't personalize it. You know you, right? You know
Right.
who you are. I don't need to personalize it. So I gave people this example. I said, Michael Phelps is arguably the best swimmer in our time, if not ever, or
Facts.
up to this point, right? And still, if that brother was near a tidal wave, don't care how many gold medals he has,
Mm.
he's gonna get sucked into the wave. There ain't
Absolutely.
nobody swimming out of that unless it's a miracle of God. So
Facts.
why? If you know that it's a tidal wave that sucks you in every time, sis, bruh,
It ain't you.
don't jump in. It's not you. But here's the thing: don't jump in to the
Mm.
tidal wave. Don't get sucked into the tidal wave. Deep.
And see, and that's why I be like, I'm out because I'm not getting sucked in. But
But here's
I love that acronym. I love the way
yeah.
that you did it, that you said it, because I think that because those type of personalities to suck us in, it's
Mhm.
everything that they say is, well, you this and you that and you this and you that, so we personalize that, we take that on. That's why we have to defend, that's why we have to engage, that's why we have to explain, because no, I need you to understand, it's not me, I did this, I didn't that, you exactly. So it's like those, so it's those triggering words. And one thing that you said, as they use those triggers, they know we will respond.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
like you said, just don't say nothing. And if it gets to that level of abuse, because we know that that's out there, oh, you're not going to listen to me, you're not going to respond, you don't hear me talking to you, then it gets deeper. Then that's when you really have decisions to make. And
Hmm.
your first decision should be you.
And
Point
safety.
blank, period.
Family members, friends, DV shelters, popo. You need to get yourself safe. You need to get your kids safe, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and of course, we want to meet people where they at and what
Yes.
they need. We're just saying, if it's in that space, get safe, right? If you feel abused in that way, anyway, you need to be safe. We're just saying for the dysfunctional behavior patterns where abuse is not present, learn not to get sucked in, right? You can see it's not you, sis or bruh. And if it is you, sis or bruh, sometimes we got to grow beyond what we came out of, which will be
Ooh.
which will be an episode here in a couple a couple of episodes away, right? Your family system.
Ooh. Ooh.
Well,
On that note,
on that note, this was a good conversation.
it really was. It
Yeah,
always is.
always is. I could talk to you for hours.
Hours, honey. Hours. But we only got
Well,
a little bit of time with y'all, so
yeah, but we want to say thank you so much for opening the door and having this conversation with us. As always, you can email us any questions or comments that you may have about this episode, or even if you'd like to see other episodes or titles at opendoorcombo@gmail. And you can listen to all of our episodes on the Ebony Ascent platform at ebonyascent.com, as well as find us on all the major podcast platforms. Until next time, remember, our door is always open.
see you next time.
Have a good one, guys.